You're listening to The Stall and Stable Show. Ideas for happy horsekeeping.
Are you thinking about ways to keep your horses cool during extreme heat events or long, brutal summers, but won't go so far as to install air conditioning in your barn? Maybe a mist cooling system can help. This episode's guest, Bashil Patel, is with Mist Cooling Inc., a Texas-based manufacturer of a product that can drop the ambient air temperature by 10 to 20 degrees or more. It's a system that leverages a simple physical process, evaporation. Bashil explains how mist cooling works and how you can use it in your barn. So listen in. This is episode 126 of the Stall and Stable Show. Today's Wednesday, September 20th, 2023. I'm your host, Helena Harris. Please support our sponsors as they help make this podcast possible. Our title sponsor is American Stalls, and I am grateful for their ongoing support. If you want the very best for your horses and your farm, you need to know where to look. Any horseman worth their salt knows that good equipment lasts a long time. Our farms are an investment not just in real estate, but in our happiness. We want this joyful place to serve us and our horses for years to come. American Stalls produces everything you need to create the barn of your dreams. So pop on over to americanstalls.com and have a look around. You will be so glad you did. Maybe you've heard the saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Essentially, that means when we're pressed, when we really need something to be fixed, we typically get our creative thinking caps on and we find ways, different ways, to solve a problem than perhaps we'd done in the past. Well, in the summer of 2023, the United States in particular recorded some of the hottest temperatures on record. In fact, the globe recorded some of the hottest temperatures on record. So, climate change is here. I graduated with a degree in environmental science long time ago. And way back then, we were talking about climate change and what we could do to change our everyday lives, what kinds of changes in manufacturing, in food production, what we would need to do in order to prevent this day from happening. Well, it's here. So now we have to deal with it. And one of the things that I think are the most troubling is watching our horses suffer from the extreme heat. There are lots of creative things that we can do to provide shade and cool environments for our horses. We can also make decisions regarding their welfare, when to work them, when not to work them. But, there's always that gap. We need to provide a level of comfort that just goes beyond the basics. Air conditioning isn't really an option in barns, but mist cooling systems are. The advantages of a mist cooling system are many, and my guest today is going to describe those for us. But really quickly, if you're not convinced and you're not sure you want to pay attention to this entire conversation, I'll go through it very quickly. A mist cooling system is energy efficient. They can cool large areas, indoors or out. They don't require any special wiring or installation, which makes them easy to set up and operate. With that said, I am going to welcome today's guest from mistcooling.com, Bashil Patel, and I'll let him describe the science and the application of this super cool product. Hi, Bashil, and welcome to Stall and Stable.
Hello, Helena. How are you?
I'm great because I'm very excited to talk about this product. I knew that things were out there, but I really didn't know that you could use a mist cooling system in a horse barn. Walk me through misting systems in general. What's the science? How does it work to actually cool the air?
Great question. In fact, misting systems have been used in this animal cooling for decades. It started off with poultry farms, and since then, barns and multiple animal cooling applications. It's been used for a number of years. Misting works based on evaporation principles. It's a very basic concept. We take pressurized water and introduce it into the air using very fine droplets. So the nozzles will create ultrafine droplets. As soon as they come in contact with the hot air or the outside temperatures, it'll evaporate. We try to evaporate as much water as possible before it hits the ground. So there's different pressures that would allow us to do that, which we'll go in a little bit more detail. But the goal is to evaporate the water, turn into cool air. Cool air sinks to the floor, hot air escapes to the top. So when you're constantly evaporating water, you're dropping the air temperatures around that surrounding area where the misting system is installed.
So basically the heat from the ambient air, that energy gets sucked into these water molecules.
Yeah, so heat exchange. Yeah, absolutely. Heat exchange is nothing different than, if you're sitting out in your porch and you notice there's rain somewhere nearby and you constantly feel the air temperature drop. You're basically creating that environment wherever you need using our equipment.
Does it evaporate quickly simply because the mist is so fine, or is there a fan element? Do you have to actually move the air as well?
There's multiple ways to introduce misting into the air. So yes, there's the pressure, higher the pressure, and the finer the nozzle where the mist comes out of that allows us to produce super fine droplets. And the finer the droplets are, the faster they'll evaporate. They'll float longer into the air. They'll disperse into the air much better, more efficiently, and it won't sink to the floor as quickly. So, for example, if you compare a mist droplet to a raindrop makes it to the floor, gets things wet because it's so big, so heavy, and it doesn't have enough time to evaporate. Mist droplet is almost of a fog droplet, and when the outside temperatures are 85, 90, 95 degrees, when you introduce that into the air, the sun's energy, the heat gets used up in evaporating that droplet instantaneously. So within first 4 to 6 feet out of that nozzle, that droplet is completely evaporated. So then after that, all you have is a cool air. Now, various different ways to introduce mist into the air. You can install it using a line-based system, or you can put it in front of the fan.
So you've got a superfine mist. The higher pressure creates a finer mist. You're cooling that area off. Does it get wet? Does the area get wet when these mist systems are used?
Not if you use the high-pressure systems. I'll go into the different types of pressure. So there's in the industry, if you're searching for misting system, you'll most likely come across a low pressure system, a mid pressure system, or a high pressure system. So the low pressure system is considered anything under 100 psi, so a basic garden hose system. So then you could essentially get a very entry level low pressure system that comes in almost like a skinny hose with a hose connector. There is no pump on it, and you just hook it up to your garden hose and hang it to your area wherever you need cooling, and it will run off of the standard pressure of that garden hose. That's what's considered a low pressure system. With those low pressure systems, your droplets are a little bit on the bigger side. It's still way smaller than your raindrops or sprinkler system. People think it's just you're spraying water. No, it's still a mist that gets created, so they do still work. But depending on the outside temperatures or the conditions, you could get a bit of a dampness on the floor after a few hours with the low pressure system. So it's still not going to create mud or anything like that. It is still a mist. But then if you go into mid-pressure systems, then those systems are packed with a small booster pump that could be anywhere from 160 psi all the way up to 300 psi, depending on the type of pump it is. And that allows you to use finer nozzles. And with the combination of that excess pressure from the pump and the finer nozzles is where you create finer mist. The finer the mist is, faster it's going to evaporate. And then when you get into high pressure, you're going into a true misting system. Those are considered the actual top of the line best performance systems. They are powered with either 1,000 or 1,500 psi pump range, and the nozzles are super fine, smaller than the diameter of your human hair. And then from there, the droplets that come out are even smaller. At that point, you're creating a true fog that is so fine that if you're standing underneath a misting system, if you wear glasses, your glasses are not going to get fogged up. All you're going to feel is a nice cool air. So that's what's used at a lot of the commercial locations, a lot of big areas, stables, any areas that are larger, you would have to use a larger pump. With those high pressure pumps, you do have a higher flow that comes out at a higher pressure. Therefore, you're also producing more mist at a much finer level. And once that mist evaporates, you're producing a lot more cooler air. Therefore, you're getting the highest and the best temperature drop.
About how much cooler does the system get the air temperature? Like what's we go on like 10 degrees, 20 degrees cooler?
Yeah, so on an average usage, anywhere from 10 to 30 degrees. So in a humid climate, you're closer to 10 to 20 degree temperature drops. On a dry climate, you could get as much as 30 degree temperature drop. With that being said, it's good to know that hotter it is, the better the misting system works, because the better evaporation and better efficiency that you achieve, evaporation efficiency that you achieve. Our highest recorded temperature drop was 47 degrees Fahrenheit. That was actually inside of a copper foundry. But in a normal, on a normal environment, obviously, temperatures don't get that hot as they do when you're melting metal. But in a normal, barn or stable or stall, anywhere from 15 to 30 degrees is acceptable.
Could this work? Could you put a system under or installed on an overhang in a barn? So rather than actually being inside the barn, it could be the nozzles could spray just outside the stalls, but under an overhang?
Yeah, there's multiple ways. There's no right or wrong way to install a misting system. There's always a best way to install it. So we can always tell you what the best way for your property is.
Okay.
All you have to do is send us a few pictures, a couple of short videos if need to be, but then we can just do it via some basic layout or some simple pictures, and we're great at identifying the overhangs, the locations, the angles. We'll say, so a lot of times you could go on the openings of the windows or the garage doors to cool the hot air coming through, and then have, additional misting on the beams, or basically you could run a strap buckle cable if your ceiling height is too high, and then just run it like string lights that they do, and then put misting on those cables. So very easy installation techniques we can walk you through that would make your life much easier. There's really no need to reinvent the wheel. We've been doing this for decades, and we've installed systems for nuclear power plants.
Aha! So horse barns are no problem for you guys. Okay, now let's talk about coverage. In a typical barn that might be 36 feet wide by, say, 60 feet long, how many nozzles would we need? What kind of system would work best in that kind of environment?
So good rule of thumb is one nozzle per 2 feet is what we follow for majority of the applications. And then the height-wise, anywhere from 8 to 12 feet is a good height to mount the misting system at. Or if you have fans, if you're putting a misting system on a fan, then that doesn't matter. The height doesn't matter. You can literally have wherever you want the fan to point and spread the mist. So there's multiple different ways, and if you contact our design team, and if you send us a few pictures, we're very good at giving you recommendations on where and how you should install it, because every area is different. You don't want to put one nozzle every 10 feet apart, because then you're not generating enough mist, and you still have hot air. It's kind of like putting in a window unit on a 5,000 square feet metal building. That window unit's going to run 24/7. It's never going to cool that building. So you want to have enough mist production to drop a proper temperature in that area. So sizing the system is important. So normally, if you put one nozzle every 2 feet or one nozzle every 3 feet is a rule of thumb that the industry goes by.
I saw on your website that the water delivery system, it could be either flexible tube or stainless steel tubing. Which one would you recommend for a horse barn?
You could use either or. The benefit of a stainless steel tubing is that they're made with industrial grade 316 stainless steel tubing. It doesn't bend or create any blowouts over time if it's rubbing against anything sharp, for example, a brick or a stone or something, or sharp metal edge. So you get that longevity. It does have a bigger inner diameter, so you have more water flowing through it. It's smoother so that it flows better towards long distances without getting too much of a friction loss and a pressure loss towards the end of the line. And it looks great. Once it's installed one time, it's there forever.
Yeah, we like that. Set it and forget it. Put something in and don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Especially, stainless steel in a barn environment is perfect. What's the water source? Two things, water and power. So how do you get the water to the system, and then how do you power the system?
Regardless of low, medium, or high pressure system you buy from mistcooling.com, your water source is always your hose bib or a garden hose. All of our systems are set up and provided with the connection so that you can simply hook it up to any available water faucet that you have. That's all you need. So on a high pressure and a mid pressure pumps, we even give you a hose with the hose bib connector to feed the water into it. Those pumps also come with filtration to filter the water that goes into it. And then on the low pressure, you have a smaller screen filter and an option to add on a inline filter if your water is bad. But you don't need special plumbing.
And then power?
Electricity, just plug it into any available wall outlet that you have. Obviously, if you go into a bigger system, then you do have to look at the amperage on the pump to make sure your outlet can support that. But the smaller mid-pressure pumps, it's really less than 2 amps. And then some of the biggest pumps that we have, they're close to 18 amps.
This is what really attracted me to the system is its simplicity. And the science of evaporation is pretty simple. The water source, you just hook it up to a spigot. You provide the filter. I love this. And then you just plug it into the wall. So the simplicity of it is really what I find most attractive, because I find that the more complicated anything that you put inside a horse barn, the more likely it is to break, right? It's just something's going to go wrong. So the simplicity of this is really nice, which leads me to my next question, which is about maintenance. We have a lot of dust and debris and gunk that tends to collect on stuff in a horse barn. So the stainless steel option is nice. I like the flexible tubes as well, because sometimes we have to retrofit existing structures in order to get these things in there. So the flexibility of that tube sounds good. But what would you recommend as a general maintenance plan for this system?
Absolutely. So beauty of that, I'm glad that you asked. We've been in business since 1997, and from day one, our goal is to design our systems so that a first-time user or do-it-yourselfer can actually install, maintain, and easily take care of the system. So we have spent numerous hours on just discussion and testing, and even when we ship you a system, we actually prep a lot of the stuff so that even if it's your first time installing a misting system, it will go really smooth. So all of our connections are quick connect, quick disconnect, even on a high pressure system. The flexible tubing is great because you can cut it to whatever length that you want. You can go around any obstructions. And then the best part of our high pressure systems and our quick connect fittings that we use is that you could seamlessly switch from flexible to stainless steel anytime you want. So you could essentially go with flexible tubing from your pump that is 200 feet away, then go up the beam, and then switch over to stainless steel on the straight runs where the nozzles are. In between, you got another beam come in, switch over to flex, make a jump over it, and then start back up again with the stainless steel on the straight run if you need to do that. So that is something that only we are actually offering as a company. Many other companies haven't really put that sort of packages together. So most packages you'll see on our website, they are designed for do-it-yourselfers. On top of that, we do have a full-time tech support who can walk you through any design consultation prior to install, during your install, even after the install. So our goal is to make it super simple for any average person to install a misting system in just a couple hours.
Where have you guys been all my life? What happens in a humid environment? I live very near the coast, and the dew point is always a problem here. Even, the temperatures could be in the 70s, and yet it still feels miserable. How would a system like this work, or would we not use it on days that are particularly humid?
Yeah, great question. We are based in Houston, Texas, one of the highest humidity environment you could have. And as a result, over the years, we've actually designed our systems to work in a high humidity environment. So that's one of the reasons why our pumps are 1500 PSI. We're producing even finer mist than someone in Phoenix or Vegas, which is such a dry climate. over there, I always joke around with my friends in the misting world there that, hey, you guys can throw a cup of water in the air and it can evaporate. Over here, we have to work a little bit harder. So our pumps and our systems, or the nozzles that we use, are configured so that it produces the finest mist that works in even a high humidity environment. Obviously, when the humidity is high, you do have to go on slightly more on the higher pressure side rather than the low pressure. It would give you much better performance.
Would it help in that situation also to add the fan to that system?
The fan always helps. So fans allows you to disperse the mist and direct them in an exactly area that you really want. So we have multiple sizes fans, oscillating fans as well, so that let's say if you have a 24 or 30-inch fan with misting, you mount it on one of the posts, and that does cover 20, 30 feet, close to 40 feet in an indoor environment with no wind. So they're very effective. Benefit of a fan is you could use the fans as a normal air circulation fan when you don't need the misting. And when it's hot, you turn on the misting pump and it will start misting. So it's almost 2-in-1. So a lot of people prefer that. We also do have some retro fan kits, meaning if you already have existing fans on your property, and if you let us know what size they are, then we might be able to give you a solution that allows you to turn that fan into a misting fan.
I love all the options and the flexibility and the customization, and I can't wait for this episode to go out. I know I'm going to get all kinds of emails about this. And the conversation is timely as temperatures are warming up and we're all suffering under the oppression of the heat, especially this year. And I don't think that things are going to change anytime soon. So I think innovation, but with simplicity, like I said, the more complicated you get, the more problems tend to happen, especially in horse barns. One last question before we go. Which PSI or which system do you think would be best for a horse barn? Like the low one, the mid one, the high one? Obviously, the high one is really great, but which would be most efficient in the average sized American horse barn?
That's a question we get asked on every single phone call, and I like to answer it and compare it to a car in your garage. At the end of the day, you could have a very entry-level car with a manual transmission and a roll-down window, or you could have a Mercedes, or you could have a Ferrari. That doesn't mean that everybody needs a Ferrari, but the entry-level car still does the job. So at the end of the day, it is personal preference on what the need is. So the low-pressure systems, price-wise, yes, they're economical. They're under $100, $150. Mid-pressure systems range from anywhere from $200 all the way up to $1,000. And then the high-pressure systems start at around $1,200 all the way up to $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, depending on the size of the system. So depending on what performance you're looking for, the longevity, the cooling effect, if you're looking for a long-term solution with the best cooling results, a permanent solution, high-pressure system is definitely a way to go, especially if you have a big area. Even on small areas, you could do that. We have people with 10 by 20 space, and they choose to go with the high-pressure system. The mid-pressure systems are designed for small to mid-size areas, meaning you can maximum put about 40 nozzles, so you could only cover about 80 linear feet with those. With the high pressure, you could go, as big of a football field.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you could go from anywhere from 20 nozzles all the way up to 160 nozzles on a high pressure standard stock pump. So there's plenty of options there. Different color tubing options, stainless steel, plenty of fittings option, control timers, smartphone controller. You got plenty of ways to automate that. And then the low pressure, you limit it to about 20 nozzles. So because your hose pressure is on average 40 to 60 PSI in the United States, there's not a whole lot of nozzles it can support. So the more and more nozzles you add, you're going to get a pressure loss, and eventually it becomes ineffective. So what people do a lot of times is when they don't know anything about misting, they'll initially start with the lower mid-pressure system just to kind of prove the concept and just to see if it's going to work on a small area. And then once they see it, oh, wow, this is great. It drops the temperature, but, I wish it could do more. So then eventually we'll see that a year or 2 years later, they'll order, a high pressure system and completely install it on a permanent basis. We do recommend people contact us, go on our website, look at it, and then contact us, send us some pictures, answer a few questions, and then we can actually put together a package that is designed exactly for you, including every inch of tubing, fitting, nozzles, the clamp that you would need, pump inlet outlet fittings, filter inlet outlet fittings, garden hose. You won't have to make a run to a hardware store when you get a system from us.
That's good, because I'm always going to the hardware store. I 20 runs, you have a project, and oh, damn, forgot something. You got to go back.
Yeah. We even put Teflons on the filter fittings for you before we pack. We even put the inlet outlet fittings on for you on the pump. Every pump is tested before it goes for packaging. We're a manufacturer, so we don't do batch testing. We do every single pump multi-point inspection. So we're big on quality, we're big on details, and we're big on ease of installation.
Good, because we're hard on our stuff. Lastly, tell our listeners where they can find out more about your particular system, miscooling.com. Where else can they find you?
Yeah, so miscooling.com is our primary website where you can go online and get all the details, technical specs, pictures, videos, and simply add it to the cart and check out. All our orders shipped the same day. And in addition, you will find our products on Amazon.com and some low-pressure systems on Walmart and very limited selection on Ace Hardware. But we do suggest that miscooling.com has the widest selection, most customizations, and you'll have the best tools. And, you'll be able to talk to someone, just pick up a phone and talk to one of us. And we're great at picking up phone calls and making sure that you get the right system for your property.
Super. And listeners, I will put a link up to the miscooling.com website just in case you can't remember, like me. Just go to stallandstable.com, look up episode 126, show notes. You'll find the link there to miscooling.com. Bashil, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to explain this to us and our listeners.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Well, I had no idea that you could use a mist cooling system in a barn. I mean, I heard about them, but I thought they were just for shishi restaurants and country clubs. How wonderful that we can put them to use in our barns to keep our horses comfortable as the weather does increasingly crazy things. Many thanks for following along today, and many thanks to our sponsors, American Stalls and Barn Pros. Listeners, if you found this episode helpful, or if you rely on Stall and Stable for advice and information about horse keeping, I hope that you will share this podcast with a friend. You can share this episode, you can share the entire podcast with a friend, or you can share our content on social media. Stall and Stable is a small business. That means we have a small marketing budget. We don't have a lot of leverage when it comes to competing with the big guys and their reach, especially their organic reach. So if you could help share our content, I would be grateful. And if you have ideas for how we can improve Stall and Stable, please let me know. You can reach me at helena@stallandstable.com. And that's going to be a wrap for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it.